Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson. Welcome back to my beautiful Disclosure of Everything channel. My guest today, you've seen her, you know her. She is the medical rebel, Dr. Lee Merritt. Welcome, my love. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
It's so exciting, and you're always such a joy to talk to. The last time I got together with you and Dr. Christiane Northrup and Dr. Rainer Fulmich, it was incredible. Sadly, our friend Dr. Rainer Fulmich, the international lawyer that took on Deutsche Bank and Volkswagen and won, has been kidnapped from Mexico and arrested in Germany and has been in prison now for 8 months because they're very, very scared of Dr. Rainer Fulmich. So guys, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section and send your love to him, and I will gather all those messages and I will make sure that he gets them because I'm connected with him and his people. So we send you Dr. Rainer Fulmich, our love, our great love, a great and beautiful man indeed.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Now let's get back to you, Dr. Lee Merritt, you saucy minx. You have been just turning over barrows and barrows and barrows of truth for a very long time. Let's go back a bit to your naval history when you worked in the bounds of the Navy, please.
Well, yeah, no, I trained, I went to in the days, it's funny now when you look back at time, in the 1970s, my medical school, I went to a private university out in the East Coast, University of Rochester, and it was $7,500 a year. And we thought that was outrageous. Now it's, they're $50,000, $60,000 a year. It's just unbelievable. But we thought that was a lot of money. So I took a Navy scholarship to go through medical school. And it turned out to be one of the best things I ever did because you really see the world differently. And I got to travel and live in Japan. But also what happened as it happened, I ended up marrying a Marine colonel at some point in my life. And he was at the Pentagon. And what had happened is there's a subcommittee of the Congress called the NRAC, which is the Navy Research Advisory Committee. They don't meet anymore, but at that time, by law they needed a doctor on this committee, and they looked at future technology for the naval services. So my husband at the time had given a brief in front of them and said, "Hey, they're looking for a doctor. You ought to put in your CV," which I did and got on this. So I had a congressional appointment to this thing, and I literally met with captains of the military industrial complex in a locked vault. That's how secret some of this stuff was. But they had to have me on there, I think, for some, I don't know why the reason was. They thought they had to have a doctor, but they did look at things that had medical import. But generally, I wasn't too useful looking at kilo-class submarines and littoral warfare. So I, on my own, started studying bioweapons and chemical weapons. Now, interestingly, when I was in Japan, I took care of the doctors that served for 30 years. They were supposed to be there 6 months. They were there 30 years looking at the survivors of the nuclear bombs at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So I knew a lot about that, the inside poop on that. But I studied bioweapons because I really didn't know much about that. And one of the big things that happened, this was about 1991, and I was on it before that, but during that period of time, in 1991, in the American Congress, they passed the Nunn-Lugar Act. And the Nunn-Lugar Act was to buy up all the old Soviet bioweapons labs around, not just in Ukraine, but in Kazakhstan and Georgia and various different places, under the guise that we need, the Soviet Union's collapsing. We need to buy up these labs and prevent them from getting into the wrong hands. Well, it turned out the wrong hands were probably us, but in any case, they bought these things up, and they sent our bioweaponeers over there with the tasking to do three things: to get them up to modern standards, to start doing gain of function research, and to do vaccine research, to set it up for vaccine research. So when all of this broke out, and in 2020, number one, I had contacts. And I talked to one of my contacts that had been a guy at Fort Detrick, i.e. a bioweaponeer. And always before SARS and whatever, I asked him, I said, should I follow this? No. But this one, in first part of December of 2019, when most people didn't even know anything was going on, I asked him that question. He said, yeah, you better follow this one, which I did. And that's how I got in this whole thing.
Yeah, that's really incredible. You were definitely a face that was coming out with a naval background, medical doctor, naval background that people were paying attention to. And your level and understanding and researching of history, historical facts, your in-depth ability, your brilliant brain that can hold so much information. And of course, you've had access to actually unredacted documents, etc., over these years, enough to come together, and you are actually speaking this year, and I'm so grateful and proud.
I'm excited.
Yes. Oh, I love that you're excited. I know there are so many people that are excited at Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, and it's going to be just so great having you speaking to things uncensored, which of course is what our conference is, and full disclosure, uninhibited. I want to
Nice.
ask you a little bit about your understanding and studies of something that's not spoken about too much, but a lot of people have such an interest in it because I truly don't understand the Khazarian mafia, the Khazarians. Can you give us some insight, please?
Okay, well, that's going to be part of my talk when if people come to the Colorado conference, which I'm really looking forward to. But you know, there's been a lot of controversy over this whole thing of the history of Khazaria. And it's very easy for people to dismiss it and say, oh, there's no evidence for that. But no, there's lots of historical evidence. And I go back into, you know, when I did my research, I mean, I found historians from 900, you know, AD that were talking about this, that were not that far from the events. Now, it's interesting too, recently, Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin. Now, why did Vladimir Putin, and you know, Putin asked him, he said, do you want me to just do a soundbite or do you really want to learn something? That was essentially what he asked.
Yeah.
And so Tucker thought he wanted the whole answer anyway, but he said, no, I want the real interest. And then he couldn't really, you could tell he didn't really know this history and he didn't really understand why Putin's doing what he's talking about so far back in time. But Putin started his discussion at 850 AD. Now, you know, to explain what happened, what's going on with Ukraine and Russia today, why would he start at 850 AD? Well, 850 AD was a big time in their Russian history because at that time, and my talk in Colorado is going to take this back to 5000 BC, because at the end of the day, we're not, and let me just point this out, at the end of the day, we are not dealing with any religion, any modern religion, any particular group of, any particular skin color, any particular nationality. What we're fighting is a global, very small group of elite, and they're all related by blood in a way, and we can follow them through history using bloodlines, symbolism, and linguistics. And that's what I do, and historical documents. And that's essentially, so what Putin's, the reason he started at 850 was that's when this group of elite people who had infiltrated this country. Khazaria previously had been ruled by a king and it had a big population, and it was at a critical hub for the Silk Road, for transport of goods and services from side to side in the world at that time. So it was a hub for economics. And what was happening is this small elite that had taken over the country started murdering people traveling along the Silk Road, murdering, you know, practicing the old religion of human sacrifice and all sorts of bad things. And they were sitting at the back door of the Russians, okay? And also the Bulgarians and the Persians. And so I think it's pretty well documented that at some point, and it's about 850 AD, that led by Prince Oleg, I believe, Prince Sviatoslav, the first, I believe. I'll have to remind myself, but led by the Russian prince at the time. There were no czars at that time. It was just the prince. The Russians, the Bulgarians, and the Persians got together and they decided they're gonna take out this elite leadership of the Khazarian Empire. They're going to go take them out. They tried working with them to, no, this is, I take that back. I hadn't thought of this for a while, but it's 850 AD was when they didn't murder them. They just said, okay, you guys have to convert to an Abrahamic religion because we are not going to have you sacrificing children. Okay, this is not going to happen anymore on our back shores. But it was also about economics. So yeah, and this was Oleg. And so what happened is they did that, but the Khazarians didn't convert. And this is all documented. And one of the people that writes about all this is Solzhenitsyn in his book 200 let vmesте, 200 years together, which has not been translated by a publishing house since he wrote it. Okay, and he's long dead. So the sad thing is, this is a 2 or 3 volumes, depending on what edition you get. And I have it in Russian. I'm struggling through it in Russian because I think this is such an important document. But the only English type translation we have is a pirated kind of version from the old Soviet Union, when people took up pieces of the book and they would like memorize a certain, part of it, write out just a certain part that they and translate it into English, and it would get passed around, and then eventually it all got put together in a way. And I kind of compare that to what I'm reading in Russian, and it's pretty close. I mean, every once in a while I find differences, but that's all we've got to translate it into English. And there's a reason for that, because he really goes through this in detail, and he has lots of references that you won't find in English history of the area. But so what happened is that was when they started pushing back against these evil people in the back door that were in what is now Ukraine. That's why Putin went back to 850 AD. Now, what happened is, so they chose, theoretically, King Bulan at the time chose Judaism for reasons that he, I don't know, but they have some claims why that was chosen, but you various stories. But later, it was after that his son and grandson brought in people from this area of Anatolia, Babylon, the area of Babylon, to come and to really inform the people about this religion. Well, they didn't really necessarily inform them about what we think of as Torah-based Judaism. Okay, this is one of the problems, is that this is an infiltration into religion, into culture, into everything. So things didn't get better, they got worse. And by about 1150 AD, then Prince Sviatoslav I, he led the coalition of the Bulgarians and the Persians again to actually get rid of these guys. They said, okay, we tried being nice and having them convert to an Abrahamic religion and come into the family of nations, but since they didn't really play well in the sandbox, now we've got to do something. And they went in to drive them out. But one of the things about this elite group is they have very good intelligence services. They're very astute in intelligence gathering, and they knew it was happening. And so at the last minute, the royal court of Khazaria, with all its gold wealth, fled, and they fled west into Europe, and they went to Spain. They went into what's now Hungary and various different places, and they spread out of that area anyway. And so that's kind of how that story started. And then so people have kind of looked at this and said, but look at where that got us. I mean, all these people spread out, and they became the banking systems. This is the Rothschilds and the various branches of the European banking cartel that we see as kind of the problem today. And so I think that's where the term Khazarian mafia comes from, is because they trace their heritage back. Now, in response to that, there's been a counter history response where they try to deny this by saying, oh no, we've done genetic tests, and no, the Yiddish speaking or the Ashkenazi don't come out of there. Which is like the House of Rothschild. They don't come out of the Caucasus, out of Khazaria. They come out of Europe. So it's called the Rhineland hypothesis, or the Caucasian hypothesis, the Khazarian hypothesis. And they try to disprove that. But I'm just going to tell you, in my opinion, and I'm going to show the evidence at the conference, that it does come out not of that area. It doesn't come out. Khazaria is a pass-through, and so. Again, this has nothing to do with being Ashkenazi or being Jewish or being anything. It has to do with an ancient little speck of the world that was in Anatolia. It's not Khazaria is not the final destination or the origin of this evil that we're dealing with.
That's interesting. That was going to be my question, because there's a lot of people coming into the information and onto my channel who are so curious. And so we never assume that people know. So when we hear the word Khazarian mafia, is that because there was a country called Khazaria? Is it a bloodline called Khazaria? Or is it an actual, the name of a movement called Khazaria?
Right. It was a kingdom, and it was infiltrated by this, at the time, what Herodotus called an equestrian elite, which I would say today are the economic elite and the technologic elite. You know, what we have today, if you look at it, there, and I'm going to go through the bloodlines from the basis, like I say, we can follow these things now genetically pretty interestingly, and they all end up in the same place in Anatolia. And in Anatolia, I'll tell you another, this is just one little tidbit also. We wonder about why all this science is being perverted to push these agendas. And that's clearly happening. It's not just about, you know, the recent one. It's been happening for a long time. The question is why. And if you're going to control science, one of the things you have to do is control scientific publishing. Now, in ancient Anatolia, there was in this group of elites, they had this old religion, and they did human sacrifice, and it was at the altar of Pergamon, the Pergamon altar. And I didn't know what this meant when I first read it. I knew the name. I had it associated with something else I'm going to tell you, but I didn't understand any kind of biblical aspect, because that's just not I'm not a biblical scholar. But a friend of mine who is said, "Oh, wait a minute. You know what that name is from?" And he said that was Pergamon was considered the seat of Satan in Revelation, but he said, "I can't remember the rest." Well, I then went to look at it. Pergamon was an altar of sacrifice in ancient Anatolia. And at that time, um, at some point, it fell into ruin. The altar fell into ruin. And in the 1800s, the Germans came and unearthed the friezes from this ancient human sacrifice altar of Pergamon. And they took them back to Berlin, and they recreated a full-size reproduction of the altar of Pergamon. Again, the place that was known to biblical people in the time as the most evil thing in the world. That's kind of the way they looked at it. So so it's now sitting in Berlin in a museum. In World War II, that altar was used by Albert Speer as a blueprint, essentially. That's why he recreated the Nuremberg rally building that Hitler gave his speeches in front of, that great big building. If you look at it closely, it has kind of Romanesque columns on it and things, because it's a recreation of the Pergamon altar. Okay. I mean, and then the other point about Pergamon, after World War II, some very famous scientists, including Alexander Fleming, who was the discoverer of penicillin, they went to the British government and they said, you know, look at what happened during the war. We really got sidetracked sometimes on science stuff because we just weren't sharing good information before the war, and we need better publication. We need a better way of sharing scientific information through a bigger publishing house. Can you do something about that? And the British government didn't even hesitate, because ironically, at that time, the British government owned Butterworth's, and Butterworth's was the biggest scientific medical publishing house in the world going into World War II. But it wasn't just owned by the British government in general. It was owned by MI6, the British spy agency. Okay, like our CIA and you have MI6, right? So why would they be owning medical and scientific publishing? Well, it's because if you've got to control the narrative, who better to do it than intelligence services? And by stopping people from publishing things that doesn't fit the narrative. That's why, you know, we used to think it was just those jerks that were running the so-called whatever journal we were trying to publish our papers into. No, it's much bigger than that. But and so after the war, to do what Alexander Fleming, and it was Charles Galton Darwin, famous eugenicist grandson of Charles Darwin, um, uh, to carry out this improvement is what they were going to do with scientific publishing. They went to the Germans and they said, "Hey, you got this publishing house named Springer. Let's join them together, make this huge house." Okay, fine. And it was called Pergamon Press. Okay. The Pergamon altar, the Pergamon building at Nuremberg, and now the Pergamon press. You can't make this up. And again, why would you name a journal of education for scientific, knowledge for the altar of human sacrifice of the old religion to the old satanic gods? I mean, you got to just say. Then the key, the pièce de résistance here is, who do they make the editor-in-chief? I just think this one is hysterical. The editor-in-chief, they chose not a scientist, they chose a spook, a spy, and it was Robert Maxwell. Now, Robert Maxwell, yes, Robert Maxwell, as you know, but many Americans don't, he was a spy for the British against the Germans in World War II. So he worked for MI6 in World War II. He's clearly a Mossad agent because he's buried on the Mount of Olives. He was rumored to be a double agent for the KGB, and we know he's a CIA cooperating person or some kind of CIA operative, because he's the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, the pedophile consort of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. And that's also part of this cult, this death cult of this ancient religion, is pedophilia. You can't make this up. It's all, and it's like George Carlin, the American comedian, said years ago. He said, it's a big club, but we ain't in it. So it's actually not that. This is not relative to the number of people in the world. The club, these elite technocrats that are running the world, they're not that many. So we outnumber them over 1,000,000 to 1. So I think we see a way out of this, but we have to recognize who they are.
Yeah, this is absolutely mind-blowing, as I knew it would be, because it's you, Dr. Lee Merritt. There's only one of you in the world, and we're so grateful that you're here talking to us. Got a couple of questions.
That's sweet.
Got a couple of questions again in terms of like trying to help the audience like understand and keep up, because most people don't know this information, although you always get them out there saying, "Oh, I knew that." No, you didn't. You liar. Fibber, pants on fire. Anyway. Can you tell us, where is Anatolia? Or
Okay,
what?
so when we were talking about the Khazarian mafia and Khazaria, if you look at the Black Sea, okay, the Black Sea is kind of a lima bean shaped body of water, and at the top of the Black Sea is where Khazaria was, and that's Ukraine and Russia border the Black Sea on the north and the eastern sides. But underneath the Black Sea, where the lima bean indentation is, that's now Turkey. So this is what is now modern Turkey. There was ancient Anatolia, and within Anatolia they were not really countries like we think of countries, but they were states ruled by rulers, and there were three that were probably important to our history here. One of them was Lydia, which is the farthest west. One of them is Phrygia, which is going to be a major player here. And then another one is Babylon. Now, we always hear about I used to refer to these people as the Babylonian mafia because I had traced it back thinking that was it. But, one of the other things I will tell you about the elite that rule the world is they change their names and they hide their history. And one of the ways they do it is behind frontmen. So it's kind of like Klaus Schwab. If I put up a picture of Klaus Schwab, and I usually do this at meetings, and I say, how many people know who this guy is? And almost everybody, or Bill Gates, they know who these guys are, right? Because they're being pushed in our face, and they're so colorful. I mean, come on, Klaus Schwab is like this Bond villain. He's just a caricature of a Bond villain. And he's got the Germanic, talk, and his father was a Nazi officer. I mean, you couldn't make up a worse face man for an organization like the WEF than you could Klaus Schwab. I mean, but it's so over the top that you have to ask yourself, who is he really? He's a puppet. He's not running the show. He's a puppet. And so what the puppeteers, the elite ruling the world, they are the puppeteers. And they put these people out front rather than you see them. Okay, because if you start looking at people like the Orsini clan, Pepe Orsini, and the black nobility, and the senior Jesuit masters, and people like that, then you're going to start pulling up rocks that they don't want you to see under. And so they put these colorful front men out. And I'm going to tell you honestly, they do it in science too. Um, I have a series I'm starting on my Rumble channel, and I've just done a couple of them, but it's called Watch the Front Men. And what I'm doing is I'm taking scientists, and I'm that we have thought all our lives, we've been told these were the great men of science that came up with all this smart stuff. And then you look at them and you realize, did they? Is this really what happened? And so right now I'm working on Charles Darwin.
Mm.
These guys, yeah, most of them. And I've done Einstein, I've done Charles Darwin, and I've done John Franklin Enders. Now, many people might not know that, Dame, but we wouldn't be believing in viruses if it weren't for John Enders. And I'll just give you a little snippet. When I started looking at him, because I knew that we were being scammed about viruses scientifically, but I tried to figure out how did they pull the scam off? And when you try and explain the actual science, it gets pretty deep and boring. And I would try and talk about it to audiences, and their eyes would glaze over. And in fact, my eyes would glaze over. So I said, there's got to be a better way of explaining the problem here. So I decided to personalize it because that's what they do. They know how to run psychology. They're psyops people. These are the Tavistock Institute people. You know, they run these things. They know how to sway public opinion. They know that visual things are much more important than the written word, for example. So I decided to see like a homicide investigation, who did it, how they did it, you know, what was the means, motive, and opportunity, and who was it? And I found this guy, John Enders, that they claim John Enders wrote the seminal paper for which he got a Nobel Prize that proved in their mind that viruses existed and could be cultured. Okay, he was pushed out just like Klaus Schwab. I mean, he's on Time magazine. He's on postage stamps, for God's sakes. I mean, he's everywhere in the day that this was happening. Okay, so they made him and they call him a Vax Pack hero on the postage stamps. Like, really? I mean, he is the father of modern vaccines, and he is the father of virology, essentially. You know, they don't call him that, but I started looking up into him, and this is what I found out right away, and I just started laughing because this is such a humorous false narrative. This reeks of a Hollywood scriptwriter that didn't have good tech support. I'm just going to tell you. You know, like they have somebody come in and so that when you're playing a sheriff in a town, you do it correctly. They hire some ex-sheriff to tell how to do it. Well, obviously they didn't bypass that step because they claim that John Enders, well, first of all, you know about the Skull and Bones Society, right?
Yes, yes.
We all hear about, again, that's the front man. We all hear about the Skull and Bones Society, but how many people know there are 3 of these secret societies at Yale, and Skull and Bones is kind of on the bottom. The top society is actually the Scroll and Key Society. So the little people, the lesser lights like John Kerry and George Bush, they can be those Skull and Bonesmen, and we'll put them out there. And so people get looking at them and the fact that they were members, and they won't look at the Scroll and Key Society, because the Scroll and Key Society, these are the big money East Coast scions. These are the kids of the big money establishment on the East Coast that go to Yale. So this is the top of the secret societies. Anyway, so John Enders inherited 19, and by the way, so my dad had 3 doctorate degrees. He was a brilliant guy, but he was the son of a dirt poor farmer and blacksmith. He put himself through college. So this is not the story of my dad. But John Enders, he inherited $19 million, and he took himself to Yale University. And he enrolled in Yale in 1916, but and this is from the Nobel laureate site, which I think should probably have the history correct. They claim that he left Yale in 1917 to go fight in World War II, and he became a pilot in the Air Force with the rank of ensign. Now, you know, here's why that doesn't ring true. Number one, there was no Air Force in the United States military in 1918. Okay, the Air Force didn't become a thing until World War II timeframe. It was called, you know, people just flew biplanes, for example, for the Marine Corps, for the Army, or whatever. So there was no Air Force. And second of all, an ensign is a naval rank. I was once a Navy ensign. It's only in the Navy. You never have an ensign in any other, especially not in an Air Force. So how did this come to be? Oh, and then The other thing is he leaves Yale after he graduates Yale in 1921, I think. He leaves and goes out and has a career in real estate, selling real estate, you know, and but at some point, by 1934, he's been given a PhD. He's been granted a PhD at Harvard in bacteriology and immunology, which sounds all nice and sciencey and stuff, until you realize that I went back. I said, wait a minute, because I graduated when I was in the University of Rochester in New York. My colleague was an MD PhD student, and it was one of the first years they granted an immunology PhD, and this is 1976. Okay, so I went to Harvard's immunology department, and I discovered the first immunology PhD they granted was in 1974. So they're telling you that this guy had a PhD in immunology in 1934 and got the Nobel Prize in the 1950s for this work. And then when you look at the scientific paper that he got the Nobel Prize for, you can't even actually get at the original paper, but fortunately he recreated it for the speech for the Nobel Laureate Prize. So we can go through the graphs and we can go through the argument, we know what actually happened. And when you do that, you realize it's total BS. So when I go around, I actually do give a medical technical kind of speech. I always ask, I said, is there anybody here like a 6th, 7th, or 8th grader in the room? Because afterwards, when I tell you how they proved the existence of viruses and culturing viruses, I want you to come to me afterwards and explain to me why it's completely nonsense, because it's that easy to prove. An 8th grader that really was a good student and liked biology could disprove that this paper showed you anything. And it's unbelievable. So this is the front man.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Einstein's one. I mean, you know, modern physics went down the road of Einsteinian, quantum mechanics and Einsteinian relativity and all that kind of things. But it didn't take us probably where we needed to go. It probably limited us from understanding the real physics that had been worked out by other people like Maxwell. And the problem is, I tried to find a video, for example, of Einstein giving a physics lecture. Now, if I go into it's 2024. If I go down into my small town grocery store and I just randomly ask people, name me a famous physicist, how many people are not going to name Einstein? That's probably the only one they can come up with. Mm-hmm. Now, Einstein lived in the age of movies. Okay, if he's this famous, why do we not have a movie of him giving a film of him giving a physics lecture? Conversely, Feynman, Richard Feynman, who was a brilliant physicist who was at Caltech for many years and a contemporary of Einstein. So these guys lived at the same time. Einstein died sooner, but nonetheless, they were around in the 40s when we clearly had movies, and they were both physicists in the 40s. And I have a nice video of Feynman giving a lecture on physics to I think Cornell University. And he actually talks about relativity. He explains relativity he walks up with a piece of chalk on a chalkboard and does mathematics and does physics. And you never see that with Einstein. In fact, the only thing I can find of him on a film is clearly staged. He's walking into, I think, someplace in Princeton. And he has a piece of paper that he's reading from. It's like he's reading a script, and he stumbles over E equals MC squared. He reads it like an actor. He doesn't read it like somebody that knows the science he's talking about here. And that's not just because of his language thing. It's just the way he reads it. It's like he'd never come across these words before. It's really bizarre.
It's so bizarre. You mentioned Darwin. Years ago, my grandfather, he's full-blood Welsh. He's dead now. Great man and a brilliant man, brilliant mind. If he wasn't reading an incredible book, he was plugged into Beethoven or Mozart, and then he could fix everything in the neighborhood. He was a brilliant electrical engineer. He was so clever. So years ago, wow. Yeah, at 20, I think I was like 23, 24, he gave me a book to read. He said, I want you to read this. And it was Darwin's Theory of Survival of the Fittest. And it was written by a man called Sir Loren Isley. And I did read that book because I always wanted to make my granddad proud of me. And I had an interest, and he knew that I was interested in everything, as we all are and should be, hopefully, way before our 20s. But And so one of the things that blew my mind, which backs up completely what you're saying, is that there was so much study done on the Galapagos Islands, of which there are many. And even to this day, we are still finding species there in the ocean, in the crustaceans and around the mountains and the hills. And they would say the tortoise that live there, they can't go past this certain height because of their lung capacity, whatever, Trevor. They're up at levels that are just unthinkable. So again, the science has been wrong. But the person that mostly did years and years of living and studying was a guy called Wallace Arnold, or Arnold Wallace. It's something like that. I was twisting things back.
Alan Wallace, I think.
Yeah. And he didn't get any credit. And I remember at that point of my life realizing, my God, he would do the research, take the samples, photograph, catalog, send it all back to America, which is a long way from the Galapagos Islands, and Darwin got all the credit. So it doesn't really take much to, when you say that to everyone, to go ding, 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 and we need to be dinging and donging and realizing some of the things you are saying, which are absolute fact. Now, you also mentioned Berlin. And, I went to Berlin years ago to do a TV show. I went 2 years running to do a TV show to broadcast from there for the British market. It was a live TV show. And I am, so if I go anywhere in the world, Dr. Lee, don't come with me. I want to go to the library. I want to go to the museums. I want to see the artworks. I want to see the stonemasonry. Just go away. I'm that person. I'm a bore. Don't come with me because I'm going to take ages. All right. But in Berlin, I could barely leave my hotel room. I could barely leave it. The frequency, the energy, the heaviness there. And it wasn't
In
my
Berlin.
kitchen in Berlin. It was such a heavy place. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it at all. And I was there with my friend Leslie Eddy, and she's like, come on, Danny, let's go to the Jewish monument. And then I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I really don't want to come off as ignorant because we've got this great opportunity to go and, explore Berlin, but I just can't do it. I'm just like, I can't shake this terrible feeling. And she came back and she said to me, it's good you didn't come. It was really devastating and heavy there and sad. And she's an...
And what year was that? What year did you go?
We went in 2000 and I would say 2000 and maybe 6 or 7, 2000.
So it's been a while. Yeah. So it didn't, this isn't a recent problem.
Yeah. But you raised that, then you were talking about, the pergamon and all of that. And as you're saying these things, about the altar, the sacrificial altar, the continuation of the sacrilegious, sacrificing satanic bloodline that has existed from beginning of time to now, as far as we're aware, and you're proving and sharing, then it brought me to mind also of a Bohemian Grove and the resurrection of the Moloch, the Baal there. Do you want to go a little bit into that for us?
Well, I mean, yeah, as an American, I just have to say, it's so easy for people to say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. That by the way, that was clearly, I have the CIA paper on my desktop of when they discovered that word would work to stop. That was about the JFK assassination, and the CIA coined the term conspiracy theorist to keep people silent to demean people about the JFK Warren Commission, because people weren't believing the Warren Commission report, which if anybody's read the Warren Commission report, you won't believe it either, especially if you know something about ballistics and pathology. But in any case, we're demonized for thinking about these things. And yet here for 120 years, we had all of our leaders, our political, military, economic leaders, the big players in America, and maybe from overseas too. I'm not as aware of overseas people coming, but the big people in America power structure would meet every year in this essentially this men's club, this in the redwoods in California on this 100-acre ranch essentially, and they'd stay there for a couple weeks, and theoretically they're just hobnobbing, getting to know each other, and they might have had speeches and things, but at the end they have this huge owl statue, which is a statue of Moloch, the god of child sacrifice, and they do a quote mock cremation of care, meaning they're cremating, they're sacrificing a child in effigy. And they admit it's a child sacrifice, but we don't really have a child. Well, maybe, but they don't really have, it's a child sacrifice in effigy. It's just symbolic. But still, why would we accept that it is normal for former and future presidents of the United States to go do a mock child sacrifice in front of a big owl god? I'm just saying. And that's really, we've accepted absurd things as being, and we never questioned them. That's what we should be embarrassed about, because you can see in America, you can see the creeping evil that's happened in my lifetime. It's unbelievable that when I look back, I was born in and I remember the 50s quite well. So I can tell you, we didn't have, when you went, here's something that just happened to me. I went to a country Western music thing. I don't normally go to that kind of stuff, but my husband wanted to go and he got a free pass from the gambling casino or something. So we went to this thing. Now, this is in Omaha, Nebraska, at the heartland, what people call the Bible Belt. This is supposed to be some of the most conservative, you know, Christian area of America. I'm not sure it really is, but that's the theory anyway. It was at one time, I'm pretty sure. And here's a country western, which is also supposed to be a lot more. It's not rap. It's not heavy metal. It's not head banging. This is actual, supposed to be kind of common man music, right? And this was so satanic, this whole thing. If I can find a picture on my desk, I'll show it here. It's really satanic. The, everything, it was all red. They would highlight the whole audience. I was up in a booth, so we had a huge, nice picture of this whole event. On the stage, they had all these flames going on all the time, and these pictures of flames and pictures of these weird objects. And then the crowd was all illuminated in red, and then hit the singer, who, yeah, he was dressed in a baseball cap and a plaid shirt, like, he's like nobody, but you knew that this was not right. So he's standing there, he's illuminated in white, and everybody else is in red. And then at one point, he's holding up his hand on one side, and he's holding up the microphone on the other, and he's got his hat on. I took a video of this, just I wanted to show people what was going on at this concert. When I took it home and I slowed that video down, what that gesture produced on the stage was a perfect black elongated trident. The three-pronged, the classic, which we see in pictures of Satan with him holding the trident. The trident is also, the symbol for Neptune, for Ukraine. Unfortunately, they took it from there. But he made this thing, and no, I don't think you saw it when you were sitting there, but you could certainly see it on the video. It's
Wow.
bizarre, and that
Yeah.
we never saw stuff like that before.
No,
We just didn't see it,
we didn't notice
and
it. Yeah.
culture has degenerated, and it's become. Look at all this. Look at all the people that, and you can call it Satanism, you can call it the old religion, but look at all the musicians that were normal appearing before they hit it big. And to hit it big, what Little Nas, Katy Perry, you name, people that started out looking like normal people, and now they're all in red, and like Madonna wears the Illuminati pyramid and does the Baphomet. She's dressed like the Baphomet, the Luciferian statue. I mean, it's just everywhere. And I'll tell you, I have a friend. He actually, and you might know him, Pastor Casper McLeod. But when he was just Casper McLeod, and he was the lead guitar, I think, and singer or something for the Shondells. And he's British, and he was touted by Atlantic Records in America as the next Jimi Hendrix. I mean, he was big time moving up the music thing. So he went in, and they were going to offer him this multi-million-dollar contract. But when he realized what he had to do, and he kind of said to them, and he says this publicly, so this isn't the scene. He says, I'm kind of a baby Christian, and I don't think I want to do those things, so I'm going to not take the contract. I mean, that is a real principled act, and he's done very well in Christian music and art and preaching and doing lots of other things. But wonderful, wonderful guy. I love Pastor Casper. But he said, if you don't sign those contracts, if you don't get involved by selling your soul, essentially, you won't become any kind of star in the music industry.
Yeah.
And I think it's true. And I think it's all now in country western too. I thought when he said that, I thought he was talking about rock and roll and probably rap. Oh no, it's all of the music. And I wonder, even I don't know. I don't know what's happening in the classical world these days, but you know, you just wonder about some of this stuff. I don't wonder too much anymore.
Yeah, well, as you say, there's so much out there. I don't know whether you can hear, but I'm in Sussex in England, and there is the great air shows going on right now. Earlier, I
Oh,
saw a
nice.
helicopter bomber, and I'm hearing something. They have these jets that go over. They're called the red arrows, and the decibels and the bass on these incredible machines. So it sounds like crazy thunder coming in, but it's the planes, and I'm sure I'm going to
But no,
sit.
we can't hear it on this end, so don't worry
Okay,
about it. Or at
that's
least I
good.
don't hear it on this end.
Just in case.
But the other side of say is for probably about 30 years of my life, I lived on some kind of Marine air base, listening to jazz. In fact, it was hard moving off and realizing, because I had been assigned with the Navy, my first duty station away from training was with Marine Air Group in Iwakuni, Japan. So I lived in the BOQ at the base at one end of the runway, and so I heard these guys, working on the engines, taking off, landing. I heard it all the time, and it just becomes background noise to the point that as you get away from it, you suddenly the world got quiet, and it's like, I don't know about that. Where's the jets?
Wow, wow, that's amazing. I lived on Coronado in California, San
Oh
Diego,
yeah,
and you know that
me
half of
too.
that island, oh, you did? You lived on Coronado?
Yeah, I lived there for almost 4 years when I was an orthopedic resident at the old Pink Palace San Diego Naval Hospital, Balboa Naval Hospital on the island. I was living on the island, but then I would go to work against traffic over to Balboa Naval Hospital. That was 84 to 87.
That is wild. Well, then you'll know the base, half the island was the naval base, but you see every war machine, sky, land, sea, and all the helicopters coming in and the jump jets, and they had that special boat called Flipper or Flip that can go out on the ocean and then flip like this and go down
Right.
certain way. And it was an
Make a
underwater research. I mean, just amazing. Amazing. So I know we're getting off track a little bit, but not really, because we're kind of like embroidering and setting out the tapestry of your career and your interests, and you as a naval personnel, a senior doctor, acquired through a Pentagon contact, your husband and other people, and it's just so interesting to really learn, more about you. Now you mentioned the Mossad agent, Robert Maxwell, the big fat bloke who ends up in the ocean. Did he get pushed off his yacht? Was it his yacht? Did he fall? Did he have a heart attack because he was a bit of a
yeah.
drama? And terrible things came out. He was a brutal man. I know for a fact it's true, because I know I know somebody in the family down the timeline. Somebody I knew was married in to Robert Maxwell's immediate family. And this person knew Ghislaine. They always say Ghislaine, it's Ghislaine. That's what they call her, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Right.
Yeah. And
that's important. Actually, that point is they let it be mispronounced in the media because there's some kind of magic attached if you can actually pronounce the name correctly. And I learned that from somebody who had been at a dinner party with her and Jeffrey Epstein. That's the only reason I changed my pronunciation. I always thought it was Ghislaine or something, but no, it's not.
Now that's such a good point, because saying the words right, because words are spelling, is setting a frequency as well. That was an accident, of course. So people go, oh, look, she's making the sign of
Right.
666. And no, I'm actually a diver as well, and that's a normal sign to make. So, but with Ghislaine, she went to dinner one night when she was dating Jeffrey when they first met, and she was so excited about him, so excited for family members to meet Jeffrey Epstein. And this person, my friend, said when Ghislaine was late and Jeffrey didn't even shake hands, and he sat down next to Ghislaine and he didn't even make eye contact with anybody across the table, and he was in her ear the whole time like a freakoid little rat boy. And she was making conversation with the people at the table, but he kept nudging her, and then he was looking directly at my friend and like saying something to Ghislaine, and they were giggling, and my friend said it was the most awkward dinner.
So
So
he was like a front man. So he's like a front man. Is he just a face that they're putting out there?
I mean, it'll come, we'll find out eventually, but he definitely, well, everything leads to that. Everything that we're shown behind the money that he accrued so quickly, like, I don't know, never met the
Yeah,
bloke.
he didn't make it.
No, I trust my friend and the status that she had in that family, and wasn't connected very long. But she told me that she knew for a fact that Robert Maxwell, the dad, was absolutely brutal to his children, Ian, John, and Kevin.
Yeah. Well, that's what these
Absolutely
satanic families do.
exactly, torturous to them. And that's what they do. They anyway, it's a psychological, sociopathic psychopathy that is inflicted even in the womb of some of these
Yeah.
bloodline
Oh, yeah.
families. Right. Now,
And honestly, see, that's not by, it's not just random stuff. And this whole thing that apparently started back, I mean, at least this is where it took off, apparently. The pagans, again, the people in Pergamon in, AD 400, when Christianity was coming in and Constantine dictated that everybody would convert to Christianity and they can't be a pagan anymore, then being a pagan resulted in the death penalty. So they had to hide what they were doing. They hid their old religion. They still practiced it. They don't give that up. If you believe in these old gods, you don't give them up just because somebody comes along with a new theory in their minds. So they started, they had to figure out a way to keep their children quiet. And so what we think of as the MK Ultra program today, the scientific method of mind control in children, started with these people torturing their own children in their house, and they do it to age 6 because by then either they can be used for they join the church, they join the religion, they're allowed to forget, or they're murdered. And so that's what was going on for millennia. When we hear about Mengele in Auschwitz and various different places, he actually was, all he was doing was, I mean, it wasn't his only experiment, but the experiments he was doing with psychological manipulation of children had to do with the fact they were codifying. What his job was to codify, to make scientific explanations and understand the process so they could perfect it. They took that old pagan process of child torture, which is what you're really talking about with, you got to have some sympathy for people like Ghislaine Maxwell, because they grew up in these, they were literally, what you said is true. They were tortured in the womb. And so he codified it by doing these horrible experiments, in the death camps or the work camps. And and then he came over to America after the war, and it got perfected in various universities. My university, I found out years later, when I went back to do my spine fellowship, it was kind of a big scandal at the time that the university had been at the psychiatry department when I was a medical student, was doing MK Ultra research being paid by the CIA. And I said, does that mean they were torturing children in the basement of the psychiatry building when I was a medical student? I mean, what's going on here? But that's essentially what's happening. So this is a big program, but it dates back to ancient times.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And now we're traversing really important, big subjects here that obviously we could take hours and hours to do, but it's enough to pique the interest of the intelligent people that will see this conversation, because we all have to know. We all deserve to know, even if some people can't bear to look. And I understand that, but there's got to be a point where you've got to get over yourself and you've got to really open your eyes, because without humanity standing arm to arm and moving forward, these systems could potentially continue. Of course, I don't believe that. I know they're all crumbling down, but still, people do need to take a little bit of, attention. I wanted to ask you and again, you said about Robert Maxwell. Did he die? Did he fall in the water? We don't know.
I know.
Yeah, he was buried on Mount Olives, or the Mount of Olives, and that is a specific nod to something important, the Mossad. So could you explain to us your understanding of what is a Mossad agent?
Well, I'm just going to say to begin with that we're in an information global war. It's been going on for who knows how long, forever. and it's being run by the intelligence services, and they're not separate. If we want to, the KGB was the CIA, was MI6, was Mossad. They're all together in this whole thing. So you get a different name depending on where you are located, but I don't think it's all that different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant.
So
Let's do a couple.
Mossad is very, very, I mean, they have some really outstanding skills that they're known for. And one of them is cyber security. And one of the things that's happened, there's a unit 8200. One of the things that's happened in America is these guys have been going around offering free cybersecurity help to hospitals and doctors. And then hospitals are then being hit with ransomware. So, who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
but it's not, this isn't about Israel versus, somebody else. This is about the intelligence services versus all of us. So the intelligence services have not been on our side. They've never been on the side of the common humanity. Okay, that's what I believe. They're working for the elite, period. That's what they do. They're making sure that their agenda and their knowledge and their worldview gets out there.
Wow.
And they do it through these different branches.
They do indeed. I want people to know, like globally, the reality and truth behind the FDA, the Food and Drug Agency, or the Federal Drug Agency, that was a Rockefeller funded, controlled. They've controlled most of the pharmacopoeia that's been coming out. They've blocked so many good things. It is true, whether people can handle it or not. If you can't handle it, okay, step to the side. But these truths are so important. The FDA funded, run, blocked for many years. We've had all the drugs in the world to help so many people, and their wellness. Of course, we have to be careful because we're stepping into that arena. But there's one more little rat boy I want to mention, a little horrible rat, rancid cretin. And he's known as Dr. Fauci or Ouchie or Wouchie or Mouchie, whatever you call it. Hideous human being, and I don't care because it's true. And when people find out about him, they're going to go, oh my giddy aunt. What is his connection to the Jesuits in your knowledge?
Well, yeah, and so just to back up, the FDA is not a government agency. It's a corporation. And so it really doesn't have any authority. We have a way out of this, and we have to understand that they don't really have authority over us. Once we get that, we can step away. But what we could provably show you is the FDA has not been making medicine safer. It's actually been killing people every year by allowing bad drugs to the market and by not allowing good drugs to the market. That's what the whole play is. It's just an economic thing. They're a corporation, and a corporation is here to make a profit, not to worry about your health. So just keep that in mind when we talk about all these people. Now, in my opinion, I mean, like I say, I've been looking in backgrounds of people. So I actually fell asleep. I met Anthony Fauci when I was an intern at Bethesda Naval Hospital. We were in a little group. There were 4 of us. Okay. 3, Anthony was one of the 4. Anthony Fauci came over from the NIH to teach us something. And he was up in our little tiny resident area. And we had the junior staff guy and the senior resident, one of the staff guys, senior resident, and 2 interns, and Anthony Fauci. That was it, the 4 of us. I had been up all night working the night before on call, and I fell asleep right in front of him. So I don't think I had a future in the NIH. But in any case, we thought he was some big guy at that point. He was a young guy, but we thought he was some big, well-trained guy. But people have to realize, as far as I know, he has no specialty training. Okay. He was literally 1 year ahead of me in training at that point when they jerked him out of his residency, in my opinion, and put him in there. But if you look at the dates, there's something wrong with the whole thing. But what I will say to him is he is one of these probably tortured as a children bloodline of the satanic families. I'm using that term, the old religion families.
Yeah.
What I'll call at some point in the end of days, I'll call the Phrygians, and people will know what that means. But for right now, we'll use Satanism. But anyway, so he's one of these kids that has a weird kind of background. He wasn't, as childhood growing up, it's a little bit sketchy, and he kind of doesn't go right through residency the way that normally people do. And there's something wrong with looking. Couldn't find a training license for him. There's a lot of stuff that's wrong, but he's doing a job. Okay. He's like Klaus Schwab. He's just the front man. Now, one of the pictures that I always remember of Anthony Fauci that I think is so critical to understand is it was a panel discussion, and the three people on the panel were Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, and Francis Collins. Now, Francis Collins at that time was the chairman or the head guy of the NIH. Okay. Francis Collins, the head of the NIH, is a geneticist. Is that by accident? Okay. And then you have Bill Gates. Everybody knows that he's poking his nose into all this junk. And then Anthony Fauci. But the interesting thing in the picture, I've got it on a slide somewhere, is you see Bill Gates and Francis Collins, and they're literally touching shoulder to shoulder and kind of smiling and schmoozing each other. They're having a good time together. And then there's a big space, and then there's Fauci, and he's sitting there like this, kind of like with his head down, he's going like this. They're talking, and he's going like this. And I thought to myself, he's sitting there thinking, oh God, what are they going to have me do next? He's clearly not the top level player here. He's just a minion. He does what they tell him to do something and he does it. And if he doesn't do it, bad things happen to him. So we have to, but he's a front man. They want everybody to focus on Fauci. They don't want you to look at Francis Collins. They don't want you to look, and in a way, Gates is probably kind of a front man, but they don't want you to look at the people actually doing this. Mm-hmm. It's like when the Russians said early on in this whole thing that they didn't think this was a natural disease and they didn't think it was created in China. Whoa, see, you notice it's still being pushed off on the Chinese and maybe eco health and a couple of these things. But really, when you start going into this, there's no way DARPA wasn't involved. DARPA being the defense agency for research and da da da. So BARDA, DARPA, the deep dark players. I mean, we've been running bioweapons players. The Soviets ran bioweapons programs, and we are running bioweapons programs. And, Putin called it out, and he's been right. And so I think, yeah, Fauci's, a scummy guy, but he's not the guy we have to ultimately bring down to bring the system down. Okay. Now, and the good thing in all this is, like I was saying, this is a system based on false authority and narrative. My friend James Grunvig, he forgot he said this, but I said, I love your quote. I said, what quote is that? I said, oh, on your Substack. And you said, the world is being run by a Sumerian death cult that is masquerading as a modern military, economic, and political state and projects its power through narrative. I said, that is the most brilliant one-sentence description of what's going on here. And it may be the Sumerians or it may be the Phrygians. I haven't quite made the connection there yet, but it goes way back into antiquity, at the beginning of organized humanity. And they're projecting it through narrative. So yes, the FDA is a pain in our ass, and they just make things worse, not better. But can they really do anything? Can they really dictate to our states what to do? No, they can't. Nor can the CDC, nor can any of these government agencies. These are not. See, this is the beauty in America. We are sovereign states, and we are sovereign citizens on the sovereign states. Once you understand who you are, that you are not you're a child of God living on your land, and you're in a sovereign land that is not connected to Washington, D.C. And what happened in the big picture here is that Washington, D.C. was given to the Crown Corporation in payment for our Civil War debt and our debt. I don't know, people don't realize we were actually paying the British Crown. We paid, after the Revolution, we were still paying King George. We were paying the British Crown up until modern times. Yes. For the debts that we owed. And now we're still doing it in the way through the Federal Reserve System. Yeah. So we are, but we lost Washington, D.C. in 1871. There were acts passed and money changed hands, and to get out of debt, that's what happened. And so the DC, when you hear one of the fun things, it's a little off the subject of Fauci, but it's why Fauci doesn't matter ultimately. It's what matters is that we understand that we have the authority, not them. But what happened at some point is that they corporatized Washington, D.C. But if you know, and they changed how D.C. functioned. In other words, we are a representative republic, meaning we are independent states, like the state of Nebraska or Utah or whatever, New York. Those are all independent governmental bodies. They're totally, we are associated for the purposes of a common defense and for a couple other things that we gave by the Constitution to the federal government. Now, the problem is that our federal government existed in a time and place. It existed in this spot of Washington, D.C., and that was what was given away. And now they are a democracy, meaning it's mob rule. The people in Washington, D.C., it's all done by congressional majority rule. That's how the laws get passed in for that area, that mile square area, whatever it is, that is Washington, D.C. So when you hear news people or you hear somebody that so-and-so, they say, oh, Trump's dangerous to the democracy. Yes, he is. You know, so-and-so is dangerous for the democracy. That policy is dangerous for our democracy. They are exactly telling you the truth. It's a symbol, like raising a little flag telling you, hey, I'm this team, you know, because we're not a democracy. And when they say that, we know what they're talking about is it's dangerous for their mob rule corporatization of the world. And that's democracy, unfortunately, is not. That's why we have a representative republic. We don't have mob rule. We don't have just majority rules. We protect the minority opinion through a representative republic. And people don't understand that. But in the world of symbolism, when you hear somebody defending the democracy, you can say, okay, their ancestors came through Khazaria by way of from ancient places.
It's amazing. You know, again, it's so great that you're kind of breaking down the different front people, the Muppets and puppets, because what happens in the world at large, because of everyone's MK Ultra mind washing, brainwashing, hypnotic training that every single child in every single school across every single planet has had a level of, unfortunately, certainly in the Western world. And, you know, it's see, as a human, as you know, the second we see somebody, we meet somebody, there's a primordial response that triggers fight or flight, friend or foe, fawn or flop, you know, whatever the therapeutic terms that we use in therapy. But we need to know or feel like, is that person safe? Is that person good? And so they've got all these people as front people, and then we are then so brainwashed into being good people and being nice people that we then do as we're told. Respect the teachers, the preachers, the vicars, whatever, the shirt lifting cardinals, that, you know. Anyway, the minute, like, we're having this great conversation, right? It's so fascinating, and then something happens to people where you mention Trump, and then people go, that's it. And there's, because they are owned. They're so owned by the dark, right? And people need to not be angry about that fact, but recognize it for themselves, because this is no longer an outside job for the individual. This is an inside job where people have to recognize their own programs. And then you mentioned Putin. Oh my God, in Britain, I cannot believe, like, I'm like, wow, there's so much hatred towards Putin and Trump. You can't meet hardly anyone that doesn't think, and it's so brilliant that the propaganda.
But that's why that is the programming. And quite frankly, you know, we're not supposed to have a president that writes the laws, but that's essentially what we've got. You know, in America, you know, and that's because we've been corporatized. We're actually not, the world isn't working the way we think it is. There's really not voting in the Congress for things. Ultimately, everything's been done under the War Powers Act, the Military War Powers Act, since Abraham Lincoln. So since the 1860s, we haven't really been functioning like a representative republic, because that's why everything the Congress passes has to be signed by the president. We're under the War Powers Act. We don't really have a sitting Congress. It's a bizarre situation we're in. But so, you know, whatever president you're talking about is kind of a figurehead at this point. But the figurehead that gets put in there is representative of a certain worldview. And even in America, we're catching on. Although people could say, oh, yeah, I hate Trump. Oh, he's blah, 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 blah. For their own economic interests, they can't bring themselves to not vote for him, because economically, we were doing great during that 4 years. Okay. And our economy has gone into the toilet in the last 4 years. So are we going to keep doing that? It's like, when you have a flat tire, are you just going to drive it around for another 4 years and hope it gets better? That's not an answer here. So just on economic reasons alone. But what I'm pointing out, though, is that what you said is just exactly right. The words Trump or Putin cause people to just go ballistic. Even in my country, even Christians, you mentioned Putin, and they go ballistic. Now, let me back up and say, before President Putin, under the Soviet Union, churches were under attack. Religion, Christianity was underground. Okay. The Soviets did not want Christianity to be practiced. And so the churches were all destroyed, and they were not completely, but they were, and then what happened is, as the Soviet uh, clutch on their society kind of loosened, what happened is that it started kind of becoming a little bit more open. And under Putin, 30,000 Russian Orthodox churches have been built and stood up. They're not the ones, if Christianity is going to support somebody, and I'm not saying this is black and white, but people need to understand that that we caused this what's happening over in Ukraine and Russia. We did it in America. That was Newland. That was our State Department. We ran the color revolution there, like we ran color revolutions all around the world to get rid of people that we didn't want. And it's an evil thing that our country's been doing. I'm just going to say this. I mean, and I'm not suicidal, so I don't want to get Epstein. But anyway, but it's true. And Scott Ritter, who's been speaking out like this, he just had his house raided by the FBI. Now, this guy is, I've never heard Scott Ritter say something I didn't really agree with. I mean, these guys, if you know the history of Ukraine and Russia and this conflict, and you understand the history of what's been happening underground in Ukraine, it's the Ukrainians are victims too. They're de-Slavifying Ukraine. Ukrainian men are being murdered. It's a sacrifice of Ukrainian men. It's like what we call in America death by cop. You don't have the guts to commit suicide yourself, so you get the police to do it by going out and waving a weapon that isn't loaded and pointing it at a policeman so he shoots you. That's called death by cop. And essentially what they're doing is they're de-Slavifying Ukraine. They're getting rid of the Ukrainian, and they're going through and they're throwing out the priests, the Eastern Orthodox priests, and they're putting in their own state religionist guys. So trust me, this is not what your news is getting you. And for people not to understand this, I mean, I asked people, find me something that Putin has done. Putin has increased their GDP, like in his time. Not only has he stood up churches, the GDP has gone so much better. Their national debt is like a tenth of what it was before. It was like 90% of the GDP, and now it's like 13% or something. They've got gold reserves. They're going out. I was in the military. I used to think we were the good guys, and I'm proud of our military people. They're good people that are serving honorably for their country for the most part. It's been infiltrated too, though. So we have kind of two militaries. We've got the satanic military and the underground military and the bought military, and we've got the guys that are patriots. And I can't separate them out always, but that's what's going on. But for all the years that we've been out doing forward, what we would consider, being the world's policeman in a way, our military has been going out and thumping people and doing bad things, and we don't make friends. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Iraq. Look at what we did to Gaddafi. El Salvador. The guy, the president of El Salvador, was, I thought, brilliant when he said this. He said, you Americans have been telling us how to deal with these drug cartels for 30 years, and things have been getting worse and worse and worse. And so you'll forgive us, but that might work for you. But for us, we're going to do it our way. And they kind of chucked us out, and they're doing it. And my point is, Russia and these other countries that are the BRICS countries, what are they doing? They're actually helping other countries. I don't think they're extorting them. We go in and we beat them up and extort them. And then these guys are going in and offering an alternative to taking us as the big bully on the block. And I don't blame them. If I could buy Russian rubles and right now, and I mean, it's Modi, it's Modi. It was under Trump. It was us. It was and Putin, and they were all working together on this different way of approaching the world. Notice For people in your country that hate Trump, let me just point out, Trump is the only president we've ever had that didn't take us to war. The only one.
Yeah.
Zero.
Which is
Zero conflicts.
it's huge, and then, but back to our point earlier, when people hear, like, you say Putin, you say Trump, they immediately judge you. You're a Trump loving, Putin loving, whatever. And then they decide that they know you because there surely is this set of rituals and rules and things that make you a certain Democrat or Republican. And I think, what a load of bollocks.
It has nothing to do with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People do that. They do that.
And I'm not here to be a Trump supporter. I'm here to tell you that there's a reality of people's policies here, and there's a background. There are people behind these people pushing different agendas. And I don't want the agenda that's being pushed on us right now, which is open borders. It's loss of individual rights. It's loss of our economy, and it's a medical tyranny. It's a medical tyranny. That's why it wasn't the policies of Trump that got us into problems here. It was the policies going back to, the previous administrations, Obama and prior to that, where we had electronic medical records. And by the way, it's bipartisan. This is not just Republicans or Democrats. There is no difference between those two. It's about taking over your rights by safety, by making you think that we have to do things it's always for safety. And they used medicine to do that. And we can see how they did it. They did it through electronic medical records, but they did it through universal health care, trying to bring in the universal health care like you have in Britain. Well, I am the past president of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, and we broke off from the AMA in 1943. And why? Because we looked at what happened in Nazi Germany. We saw what the doctors did, and we said, we don't want any part of that. And that came in because in 1871, Kaiser Wilhelm set up the first socialized healthcare system in the world, was in Germany. And it became what happened in Nazi Germany. And so we didn't want any part of that. We wanted free market medicine where you're the customer, you're the patient, and we'll take care of you. And prices were lower. Everybody could afford things back then, except for the very poor. And then there was charity. In our system now, you can't even give charity well. It's horrible. But again, this is not about political parties. This is about the idea of, what are we going to be as a nation, as people, and we've been taken over for my whole lifetime by the intelligence services and by this elite that have gotten more and more control. And they have an agenda that you don't want to go down. At least I don't. It's an anti-human, evil agenda. And ultimately, again, speaking to our conference, I don't think you get out of this without saying there's non-human entities behind this, because human beings, we don't really want to kill each other. Normal human beings are not murderous. We just want to raise our families and be left alone, right? But this is what's come to the world, is an overarching, horrible, totalitarian state. And if we don't stop it in our generation, we have the technology, unlike 5,000 years ago when they were on horseback. We now have the technology to get into your brain, okay, and to change your thoughts. And that's an end game scenario. We have to stop this now.
You're absolutely right. This is such an important conversation, and one that I hope every household has, like an open, honest, loving conversation. It doesn't have to go into debate. People don't have to peacock to each other and put their opinions forward to sound better, or, peacock as if they know more. It is so far beyond that. It is so much more.
It's so far beyond that. It's a consciousness. And again, like what you said, the answer is from within us, because when we are conscious that we are beings of light that are not just limited to the here and now and touching things, it's a much bigger cosmic world. And what we have to realize is that they don't have the authority over us. These are when you drop into evil, you drop into these low energy states where you're not, you just can't deal with people that see the world and see reality as a bigger issue. as energy and as love. So that's ultimately the end game here, is that we have to realize they don't really have control over the things that matter, and we just step away from it. And an easy solution, like for example, to the medical problems, to them killing people in the hospitals, don't use the hospitals. We're going to always have to have trauma people, but right now what's happening is in our country are there's a parallel economy, a parallel system being run where people learn to take care of themselves. They have people advising them and helping them. And we have clinics that are outside the system that don't take government money, that aren't being run by the government, because the government doesn't really give a shit about people. It just cares about protecting its bottom line and controlling you. It doesn't care about your health.
Yeah.
It cares about making money from you by making you sick. So that's what's happening. We're going to have a parallel economy in a parallel world. And it's not about killing the bad guys, not the black hats, white hats. It's like the old Westerns. It's about making the guy in the black hat irrelevant. It's like, oh, you're going to rob the bank? Fine. Who needs all that? That's not going to be where we're going in the future. Who needs that monetary system?
Yeah, so important. Well, Dr. Lovely Lee Merritt, you are just a beacon of light and information. And I know that you do incredibly detailed, deep dives. You're not just like popping on Google or Wikipedia. You are a real scholar, and our beautiful friend who's also speaking at GISIC, the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, Dr. Christiane Northrup.
Yeah, that's going to be great to get together.
Yeah, and it's great because she really, it was a very difficult decision. Like, I have a list of people that want to speak at our conference for the next 5 years because they
Oh,
know,
wow.
yeah, it's the conference, it's the big one, it's the disclosure with the evidence and the proof. And everyone that stand on that stage, certainly this year, this is the biggest year ever with the biggest. I want to say legends, honestly, not one of you considers himself a legend, and that's what makes you legends. But you've got 20, 30, 40 years of tenure into the field of knowledge. You didn't just meditate one day and get a download from an alien. You are grounded, and that's what we need in order to help us really deliver disclosure in the way we do, but tell the truth of humanity, lovingly help humanity, like understand this is the reality of your world, give some a shake if they need it, and then let sit with them while they lie down and pass out, and then get them up again and go, right, now what we're going to do, we're going to stand together. It's just brilliant. And lovely, beautiful Dr. Christiane. She really, really recommended, and you and I had already met, of course, we'd already broadcasted together, and it was just beautiful. And there's absolutely not even a second in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, yes, Dr. Lee Merritt has to.
I'm honored. I never thought I'd ever be invited to something like this, so I'm really honored to be coming.
Well, we can't wait to enjoy you and explore you and hear your uncensored conversation. Just September 27, 28, and 29. Any final words for our beautiful audience?
No, I just don't want anybody to lose hope. I think that I see the light at the end of the tunnel. I see things collapsing in the world that we needed to have collapse. And I think we're making real progress for humanity, and it's such an exciting time to be alive. And so. And I think that your conference is going to bring that out too. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lee Merritt. We just adore you. We're so grateful that you're here, and we look forward to sharing you more on this channel too, and other arenas that we'll all be connecting in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Been great.
Brilliant. And to you beautiful viewers out there, thank you for spending your time with us today. Thank you for enjoying the live chat that's playing alongside and being part of gathering a connection. And thank you for, having an open mind and having an open heart, because we are well aware how difficult and traumatizing it can be to know that you've been lied to your whole life. Well, the thing that you have in common with me and Dr. Lee Merritt is us too. It happened to us too.
Everybody.
Exactly. Nobody has been untouched. Even some of the children growing up in those horrendous bloodline families, they were born into it. It doesn't make it okay, never makes it okay, but that was something that they had no choice. But we do know now, and we are doing stuff. And anyway, so I am Danny Henderson. I do send you love from my heart to yours, and I'll see you soon.